Learning a new language is akin to setting sail on uncharted waters. It is an adventure marked by moments of exhilaration, frustration, and discovery. My journey to learn English was not just about acquiring a new skill, it was about transforming myself and expanding my horizons beyond the familiar confines of my native language. Growing up in a small town where English was rarely spoken, I was fascinated by the way this language seemed to open doors to new worlds, connecting people across cultures and continents. My journey has been long and winding, filled with challenges and triumphs, and it has shaped me in ways I never imagined. This narrative is not merely a recounting of how I learned English. It is a reflection on the growth, resilience, and perseverance that language learning demands. From my first hesitant steps with basic words and phrases to confidently using English in academic and professional settings, each phase of this journey has been a milestone in my personal development. I hope that sharing my experiences will resonate with others who are on a similar path and perhaps provide some encouragement along the way. My earliest memories of English are tied to the world of entertainment. Growing up, English was not the language of daily conversation in my home or community. However, it was the language of cartoons, songs, and advertisements on television. I remember watching shows like Tom and Jerry and Scooby-Doo, where the characters spoke in rapid, animated English. Although I couldn't understand most of what they said, the rhythm and melody of the language captivated me. It felt like a puzzle I was eager to solve, and I would often mimic the sounds, even though I had no idea what they meant. My first structured encounter with English was in school. English was introduced as a subject in the 3rd grade, and it was an entirely new world for me. I remember the excitement of opening my first English textbook, which was filled with colorful pictures and simple sentences like, "This is a ball," and "That is a cat." Our teacher, Mr. Kumar, was kind and patient, and he made learning fun with songs and games. I vividly recall our first lesson, where we learned to say, "Good morning," and "Goodbye." These simple phrases felt magical, like secret codes that unlocked a new way of communicating. However, my initial enthusiasm soon gave way to frustration. English pronunciation was difficult, and I often felt embarrassed when I couldn't get the words right. The silent E at the end of words like kite or note baffled me. I struggled to differentiate between similar-sounding words like pen and pin. My classmates and I would sometimes make fun of each other's mistakes, which, though light-hearted, made me self-conscious about speaking English in class. Despite these challenges, I was determined to learn. I spent hours practicing the alphabet, reading aloud from my textbook, and trying to memorize new words. As I moved to higher grades, English became more prominent in the school curriculum. We were introduced to grammar rules, sentence construction, and short stories. While these lessons were more structured, they also became more challenging. I remember being particularly confused by the concept of tenses. The idea that verbs changed form based on time was foreign to me. It took me a long time to grasp the difference between sentences like, "I eat," "I ate," and "I have eaten." I would often mix them up in my writing and speaking, leading to amusing but frustrating misunderstandings. Despite the challenges, I was fortunate to have teachers who were supportive and encouraging. Mrs. Sharma, who taught us in the 5th grade, was particularly influential. She had a passion for English that was infectious. She introduced us to storybooks and poems beyond the prescribed curriculum, encouraging us to explore the language in a more relaxed and enjoyable way. I still remember the day she read out a poem by Robert Frost, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. The imagery and rhythm of the poem were mesmerizing, and I felt a deep desire to understand and appreciate English literature. Mrs. Sharma also believed in the importance of speaking practice. She would organize debates, storytelling sessions, and group discussions in class. At first, I was terrified of these activities. I was afraid of making mistakes and being laughed at. But Mrs. Sharma's gentle encouragement and positive feedback helped me overcome my fear. I realized that speaking, even if imperfectly, was a crucial part of learning. With time, I became more comfortable participating in these sessions, and I noticed a gradual improvement in my confidence and fluency. One of the most memorable activities in Mrs. Sharma's class was the Word of the Day exercise. Every day, she would write a new English word on the board, along with its meaning and usage in a sentence. We were encouraged to use that word in our conversations and writing throughout the day. This exercise not only expanded my vocabulary but also sparked a love for words and their nuances. I began to keep a small notebook where I jotted down new words I encountered, a habit that I maintain to this day. By the time I reached middle school, I realized that to truly excel in English, I needed to go beyond what was taught in the classroom. This led me to the world of books. Our school library, though small, was a treasure trove of English literature. I started with simple, illustrated storybooks, Aesop's Fables, Grimm's Fairy Tales, and The Jungle Book. These stories were not only entertaining but also served as a gentle introduction to more complex sentence structures and vocabulary. As my reading skills improved, I ventured into chapter books. I remember being particularly captivated by The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. The language was challenging, with its use of dialects and idioms. But the story was so engaging that I persevered. I would often read with a dictionary by my side, looking up unfamiliar words and phrases. This was a slow and painstaking process, but it helped me build a solid vocabulary and a deeper understanding of English grammar. Reading became a passion. I would borrow books from the library every week and spend hours lost in their pages. Through books, I traveled to faraway lands, met fascinating characters, and experienced adventures beyond my wildest imagination. I read everything I could get my hands on, classics like Pride and Prejudice, mysteries by Agatha Christie, and even simplified versions of Shakespeare's plays. Each book was a stepping stone in my language learning journey. Expanding my vocabulary and improving my comprehension skills, books were not my only resource. Around this time, I discovered the joy of writing. Inspired by the stories I read, I began to write my own short stories and poems in English. Initially, my writing was full of errors, but I didn't let that discourage me. I would ask my teachers to review my work and provide feedback. Their constructive criticism helped me understand my mistakes and improve. Writing became a way for me to practice what I had learned and express my thoughts creatively. The arrival of the internet was a game changer in my English learning journey. Suddenly, I had access to a vast array of resources and learning tools at my fingertips. I discovered websites dedicated to English learners, offering interactive exercises, quizzes, and forums where I could ask questions and get answers from native speakers. I also started watching English videos on YouTube, from grammar tutorials to TED Talks. These videos exposed me to different accents, speech patterns, and styles of presentation, which greatly improved my listening skills. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when I joined an online language exchange platform. This site allowed me to connect with people from around the world who were learning my native language and who, in turn, helped me with English. I made friends from countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia. We would have regular conversations over Skype, discussing everything from cultural differences to everyday life. These exchanges were incredibly valuable, not just for practicing English, but for understanding the nuances of the language in different cultural contexts. The internet also introduced me to a wealth of digital literature. I began reading online articles, blogs, and e-books on a wide range of topics. This not only broadened my knowledge but also exposed me to different writing styles and vocabularies. I subscribed to English newspapers and magazines, which helped me stay updated on global events while improving my reading and comprehension skills. Despite the progress I was making, my journey was not without its setbacks. English, like any language, is full of complexities and contradictions. There were times when I felt overwhelmed by the sheer number of rules and exceptions. I would often confuse similar-sounding words, misuse prepositions, or struggle with complex sentence structures. These mistakes made me feel inadequate, and I began to doubt my ability to ever achieve true fluency. Pronunciation was another major challenge. English has many sounds that do not exist in my native language, and I found it difficult to produce them correctly. Words like thorough and rural were tongue twisters, and I would often stumble over them. I also struggled with intonation and stress patterns, which are crucial for conveying meaning and emotion in spoken English. I remember feeling disheartened after a conversation with a native speaker who had trouble understanding me because of my accent. Cultural differences also posed a challenge. I realized that learning a language is not just about mastering grammar and vocabulary, it's about understanding the culture and context in which the language is used. I had difficulty grasping idiomatic expressions, humor, and slang. For example, the phrase, piece of cake, puzzled me for a long time because I took it literally. I also found it challenging to understand humor based on wordplay or cultural references that were unfamiliar to me. To overcome these challenges, I adopted a more systematic approach to learning. I began focusing on one area at a time, first pronunciation, then grammar, then vocabulary. I practiced speaking aloud, recording myself, and comparing my pronunciation with that of native speakers. I watched English movies with subtitles, pausing frequently to repeat phrases and mimic the actor's speech. I also started reading books on English idioms and expressions, learning their meanings and usage through context. One of the most effective strategies I found was to immerse myself in English as much as possible. I set my phone and computer interfaces to English, listened to English podcasts during my commute, and even started thinking in English. This constant exposure helped me internalize the language and think in English rather than translating from my native language. As I became more comfortable with conversational English, I realized that there were still many areas where I needed improvement, particularly in academic and professional settings. To address this, I enrolled in an advanced English course at a local language institute. The course focused on academic writing, presentation skills, and professional communication. It was a challenging but immensely rewarding experience. One of the key areas we covered was essay writing. I learned how to structure essays, develop arguments, and use formal language. This was a departure from the more narrative and creative writing I had been used to, and it required a different mindset. I had to learn to be precise and concise, to back up my arguments with evidence, and to use linking words and phrases to ensure coherence and flow. The feedback from my instructors was invaluable in helping me refine my writing skills. We also practiced giving presentations in English. This was one of the most daunting aspects of the course for me. Speaking in front of an audience, even in my native language, made me nervous, and doing so in English was even more intimidating. However, the course provided a supportive environment where we could practice and receive constructive feedback. We were taught how to structure our presentations, use visual aids effectively, and engage with the audience. With practice, I gained confidence and began to enjoy the process of sharing my ideas and knowledge in English. Around this time, I also started preparing for the IELTS exam, an internationally recognized English proficiency test. Preparing for the test was intense and required a lot of dedication. I practiced each section, listening, reading, writing, and speaking, meticulously. The listening section was particularly challenging, as it required not just understanding spoken English but also retaining and recalling specific details. I would listen to sample recordings repeatedly, taking notes and trying to improve my comprehension. The writing section required me to write essays and reports within a strict time limit, which was difficult at first. I practiced organizing my thoughts quickly, using formal language, and ensuring grammatical accuracy. For the speaking section, I practiced answering common questions and engaged in mock interviews with my language exchange partners. The preparation was exhausting but ultimately rewarding. When I received my results, I felt a tremendous sense of accomplishment. It was a testament to the hard work and effort I had put into mastering English. With my improved skills and newfound confidence, I began using English more actively in real-world situations. I secured a job at a multinational company where English was the primary language of communication. This was a significant step for me, as it was the first time I was using English in a professional context on a daily basis. Initially, I felt anxious and self-conscious. Writing emails, participating in meetings, and making small talk with colleagues in English were all new and challenging experiences. However, I quickly realized that most of my colleagues were supportive and understanding. They appreciated my efforts to communicate effectively and often provided helpful feedback. I learned how to write clear and concise emails, how to structure and present my ideas in meetings, and how to adapt my language based on the context and audience. For example, I learned to use more formal language when addressing clients and to adopt a more conversational tone with colleagues. One of the most challenging aspects of using English at work was adapting to the specific jargon and terminology used in my field. I had to familiarize myself with a new set of vocabulary and acronyms, which took time and effort. I would often take notes during meetings and look up unfamiliar terms afterward. Gradually, I became more comfortable and proficient, and I noticed a significant improvement in my overall communication skills. Using English in a professional setting also helped me develop a better understanding of cultural differences and etiquette. I learned the importance of being polite and diplomatic in emails, of listening actively during discussions, and of expressing disagreement respectfully. These are skills that go beyond language and are crucial for effective communication in any professional environment. One of the most transformative experiences in my journey was the opportunity to travel to English-speaking countries. My first trip was to the United Kingdom, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. It was a short study tour organized by my language institute, and it included a 2-week course at a language school in London. This was my first experience of being in a fully immersive English environment, and it pushed me to use the language in all aspects of daily life. Walking through the streets of London, visiting historical landmarks like the Tower of London and the British Museum, and interacting with locals were surreal experiences. I had the chance to attend classes with students from different parts of the world, all of whom were there to improve their English. We shared our experiences, learned from each other, and practiced speaking English together. The teachers at the language school were experienced and engaging, and the lessons were both challenging and enjoyable. One of the most memorable experiences was visiting a traditional English pub with my classmates. It was a quintessentially British experience, and I was struck by the warmth and friendliness of the people we met. We had lively conversations about everything from politics to pop culture, and I realized that my English was good enough to engage in meaningful discussions on a wide range of topics. This trip boosted my confidence immensely and reinforced my belief that language learning is about more than just words and grammar. It's about connecting with people and cultures. Traveling also exposed me to different accents and dialects. I remember being surprised by how different the English spoken in London sounded compared to what I had heard in American movies. The British accent was sometimes difficult to understand, especially when people spoke quickly or used slang. However, I soon adapted and found myself picking up some British expressions and pronunciation patterns. It was fascinating to see how the same language could vary so much based on geography and culture. Learning English has been a journey of personal growth and transformation. It has taught me the value of perseverance and hard work. There were many times when I felt like giving up, when the challenges seemed too great, and the progress too slow. But each time, I pushed through, motivated by my love for the language and my desire to communicate effectively. This resilience has helped me in other areas of my life as well, teaching me that with determination and effort, I can overcome any obstacle. English has also made me more open-minded and curious about the world. Through the language, I have connected with people from different cultures and backgrounds, learned about their perspectives and experiences, and gained a broader understanding of global issues. It has made me more empathetic and appreciative of diversity, and it has deepened my sense of global citizenship. one of the most rewarding aspects of learning English has been the ability to share my own culture and experiences with others. Whether it's explaining the traditions and festivals of my country to my language exchange partners or discussing the nuances of my native language with colleagues, English has given me a voice to express myself to a global audience. It has empowered me to participate in conversations and contribute my unique perspective, even though I have reached a level of proficiency where I am comfortable using English in most situations. I believe that learning a language is a lifelong journey. There is always more to learn, more to explore, and more to understand. I continue to set new goals for myself, whether it's reading more complex literature, improving my accent, or even learning to write creatively in English. I also aspire to help others on their language learning journeys. I have started volunteering as an English tutor for newcomers in my community. It's a way for me to give back and to share the lessons I have learned. Teaching others has given me a deeper appreciation of the language and has reinforced my own understanding. I am also exploring the possibility of pursuing higher education in an English-speaking country. I believe that studying in an immersive English environment will not only improve my language skills but also provide me with valuable academic and professional experiences. It's a challenging goal, but one that I am determined to achieve, reflecting on my journey to learn English. I am filled with a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. What started as a simple curiosity has transformed into a lifelong passion. The road has been long and often challenging, but every step has been worth it. English has opened up a world of opportunities for me, allowing me to connect with people, advance in my career, and grow as an individual. I hope that my story inspires others who are on a similar path. Learning a new language is never easy, but with determination, curiosity, and the willingness to embrace mistakes, it is possible to achieve fluency and beyond. My journey with English is far from over, and I look forward to all the new experiences and discoveries that lie ahead. As I delved deeper into learning English, I began to realize that one of the biggest obstacles wasn't the language itself but the fear of making mistakes. This fear was so pervasive that it often paralyzed me, preventing me from speaking up in class or even practicing with friends. The anxiety of mispronouncing a word or using incorrect grammar made me overly self-conscious. This is a common challenge for many language learners and is often referred to as language anxiety. I remember vividly an incident during a group presentation in high school. Each member of my group had a specific part to present, and I was supposed to introduce our topic. Despite rehearsing my lines countless times, when the moment came, I froze. I could feel my heart pounding, and my hands started to shake. My mind went blank, and all I could think about was the possibility of embarrassing myself in front of the class. After a long, awkward pause, I managed to say a few sentences, but I knew I hadn't delivered as I had practiced. The experience left me feeling defeated and disheartened. After that day, I avoided speaking in public as much as possible. I felt trapped in a cycle of fear and self-doubt. Every time I wanted to speak, a voice in my head would remind me of that failed presentation. This internal battle was more challenging than any grammar rule or vocabulary list. It was a struggle against my own insecurities and the fear of being judged. To overcome this, I knew I had to change my mindset. I started reading about language anxiety and how to combat it. One of the most helpful pieces of advice I found was to embrace mistakes as a natural part of the learning process. This was easier said than done. I had always been a perfectionist, and the idea of making mistakes in front of others was terrifying. But I realized that this mindset was holding me back. I needed to redefine what success meant in my language learning journey. Instead of aiming for perfection, I decided to focus on progress. I began setting small, manageable goals for myself. My first goal was to participate in class discussions at least once a week, regardless of how small my contribution was. At first, it was incredibly challenging. I would rehearse my sentences in my head multiple times before speaking. But as I gradually started participating more, I noticed that my anxiety lessened. I realized that most people were supportive and didn't judge me for my mistakes. In fact, many of my classmates appreciated my efforts and encouraged me to keep speaking. Another strategy that helped was to practice speaking in low-pressure environments. I joined a local English conversation club where people from different backgrounds came together to practice English. It was a safe space where everyone was encouraged to speak freely without fear of judgment. This was a turning point for me. I met people who were also struggling with language anxiety, and we supported each other. We shared our experiences, celebrated our small victories, and learned from our mistakes. This community became a source of strength and motivation for me. Over time, I began to see mistakes not as failures but as opportunities to learn and grow. Each mistake taught me something new and helped me improve. I became more comfortable speaking English, both in formal and informal settings. This shift in mindset not only helped me overcome my fear of speaking but also had a positive impact on my overall confidence. One of the most enjoyable and effective ways I found to learn English was through entertainment. Watching movies, listening to music, and following TV shows were not only fun but also provided immersive language practice. This method of learning allowed me to pick up new vocabulary, understand different accents, and get a feel for the natural flow of the language. I remember the first time I watched a Hollywood movie without subtitles, Forrest Gump. It was a film that came highly recommended for English learners because of its clear pronunciation and relatively simple language. At first, I struggled to understand everything. I missed a lot of the dialogues and felt lost in some parts of the story. But instead of getting discouraged, I watched it again, this time with subtitles. I paused and rewound scenes, repeating the lines along with the characters. By the third time I watched the movie, I understood much more and even picked up some iconic phrases like, "Life is like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're gonna get." Music was another powerful tool in my language learning arsenal. I started with pop songs because they were catchy and repetitive, making it easier to remember the lyrics. Songs by artists like the Beatles, Taylor Swift, and Ed Sheeran became my favorites. I would print out the lyrics and sing along, paying attention to pronunciation and rhythm. This practice not only improved my listening skills but also helped me with pronunciation and intonation. There's something about singing that makes it easier to remember words and phrases, and it was a fun way to learn. I also explored English language TV shows. Sitcoms like Friends and How I Met Your Mother were particularly helpful because they featured everyday conversations and a lot of humor, which made the learning process enjoyable. I would watch an episode, then read its script online to understand the dialogues better. Sometimes, I would repeat scenes, trying to mimic the characters' accents and expressions. This helped me understand the cultural context of jokes and idioms, which are often the hardest parts of a language to grasp. One of the challenges I faced while learning through movies and TV shows was the use of slang and informal expressions. Phrases like "what's up?" or "break a leg" confused me initially because their literal translations didn't make sense. To tackle this, I started keeping a notebook where I would write down unfamiliar expressions and their meanings. I also used online forums like Reddit and Quora to ask native speakers about phrases I didn't understand. The community was always helpful, and these interactions provided insights into the nuances of the language that I wouldn't have found in textbooks. Through entertainment, I not only improved my language skills but also gained a deeper understanding of different cultures. I learned about American customs and holidays through movies, British humor and history through TV shows, and the diversity of the English-speaking world through music from different countries. This cultural exposure made learning English more meaningful and enjoyable. As my proficiency in English improved, I began to explore more complex and nuanced forms of the language, particularly through literature. Reading classic novels, contemporary fiction, and poetry in English was a significant step in my journey. It not only enhanced my vocabulary and comprehension but also gave me insights into the literary and cultural history of the English-speaking world. My first foray into English literature was with Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. It was a challenging read because of the old-fashioned language and complex sentence structures. I remember struggling with the opening line, "It is a truth universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune, must be in want of a wife." The language was so different from the conversational English I was used to. However, I was determined to understand the story. I read slowly, often consulting a dictionary and an annotated edition of the book that explained the historical context and cultural references. As I progressed, I started to appreciate the wit and irony in Austen's writing and the intricate portrayal of social dynamics in the early 19th century. After Austen, I moved on to other classics like Charles Dickens' Great Expectations and F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Each book was a unique experience, offering a different perspective on life and society. Dickens' vivid descriptions and memorable characters, and Fitzgerald's lyrical prose and themes of aspiration and disillusionment, left a profound impact on me. Reading these works required patience and perseverance, but the effort was immensely rewarding. I felt a sense of achievement in being able to understand and appreciate these masterpieces in their original language. Poetry was another area I explored, though it presented its own set of challenges. Poems often use condensed language, metaphor, and symbolism, which can be difficult to grasp even for native speakers. I started with simpler poems by Robert Frost and Emily Dickinson before moving on to more complex works by T.S. Eliot and W.B. Yeats. I found that reading poetry out loud helped me appreciate the rhythm and sound of the language. I would listen to recordings of poets reading their work, trying to emulate their intonation and expression. This practice improved my pronunciation and also deepened my understanding of the emotional and musical qualities of English. One of the most enriching aspects of engaging with literature was participating in online book clubs and discussion forums. These platforms allowed me to discuss the books I was reading with people from around the world. I would share my interpretations of characters and themes, ask questions about passages I found confusing, and read others' insights and analyses. These discussions broadened my perspective and helped me see the language in a new light. It was fascinating to see how different readers interpreted the same text in various ways, influenced by their cultural backgrounds and personal experiences. As I continued to build my proficiency in English, I decided to pursue higher education in an English-speaking country. This was a significant decision that required careful planning and preparation. I aimed to enroll in a master's program in my field of interest, and I knew that this would require not only a high level of English proficiency but also familiarity with academic conventions and research methodologies in English. One of the first steps in this journey was preparing for the GRE, Graduate Record Examination, which is a standardized test required for admission to many graduate programs in the United States. The test's verbal section was particularly challenging because it included complex vocabulary and reading comprehension questions based on dense and abstract passages. To prepare, I studied word lists, practiced with sample questions, and read articles from academic journals and magazines like The Economist and Scientific American. This practice not only helped me perform well on the test but also improved my ability to understand and analyze complex texts. Writing the statement of purpose and other application essays was another challenging but rewarding experience. These essays required me to articulate my academic and professional goals clearly and persuasively. I had to reflect deeply on my experiences, motivations, and aspirations and express them in a coherent and compelling way. I spent countless hours drafting, revising, and refining my essays. I sought feedback from mentors and peers, and each round of revisions helped me improve not only the content but also the clarity and flow of my writing. Once I was admitted to a graduate program, I faced the challenge of adapting to an academic environment where English was the medium of instruction and communication. I had to participate in seminars, write research papers, and give presentations, all in English. Initially, I found the pace and complexity of academic discussions intimidating. The other students seemed so fluent and articulate, and I often struggled to keep up. But I reminded myself that I was there to learn and grow, and I gradually became more comfortable participating in discussions and asking questions. Writing research papers was one of the most demanding aspects of graduate school. Academic writing requires a specific style and structure, with a strong emphasis on clarity, coherence, and evidence-based arguments. I had to learn how to conduct literature reviews, formulate research questions, and present my findings in a clear and logical manner. I read numerous academic papers to understand how experts in the field constructed their arguments and used evidence. I also sought feedback from my professors and peers, which was invaluable in helping me improve my writing. One of the most memorable experiences of my academic journey was presenting a paper at an international conference. It was a daunting prospect. I would be speaking in front of an audience of experts, many of whom were native English speakers. I spent weeks preparing my presentation, rehearsing my talk, and refining my slides. On the day of the conference, I was nervous but also excited. As I began speaking, I felt my confidence grow. I was able to present my ideas clearly and respond to questions from the audience. The positive feedback I received was incredibly gratifying and reinforced my belief in my ability to communicate effectively in English, even in a highly specialized academic context. As my academic journey progressed, I also sought to build my professional skills in English. I realized that to succeed in a globalized world, it was not enough to be proficient in everyday or academic English. I also needed to master the language of the workplace. This meant developing skills in professional communication, such as writing reports, giving presentations, and networking effectively. One of my first professional experiences using English was during an internship at a multinational company. The working language was English, and I had to use it for everything from writing emails and reports to participating in meetings and making presentations. This was a steep learning curve. I had to learn how to write concise and professional emails, how to structure reports clearly and logically, and how to present my ideas confidently and persuasively. I remember feeling particularly nervous about an important presentation I had to give to the senior management team. I spent days preparing, practicing my delivery, and anticipating possible questions. When the day came, I was anxious but well prepared. As I delivered my presentation, I focused on speaking clearly and confidently. To my relief, the presentation was well received, and I even received compliments on my clarity and professionalism. This experience was a major confidence boost and showed me that I was capable of performing well in a professional English-speaking environment. Networking was another area where I had to develop my skills. In my culture, networking is often seen as a more formal and structured activity, whereas in many English-speaking countries, it's more informal and conversational. I had to learn how to engage in small talk, introduce myself and my work succinctly, and build rapport with colleagues and industry professionals. I attended networking events, participated in workshops, and practiced my elevator pitch until I felt comfortable introducing myself in a variety of contexts. This skill has been invaluable in building professional relationships and advancing my career. Learning a new language is often described as a journey, but it's not a straight path. It's a roller coaster ride, full of highs and lows, moments of joy and frustration. Reflecting on my experience, I realized that this emotional journey was as significant as the linguistic and cognitive challenges I faced. There were moments of exhilaration, such as when I successfully held a conversation with a native speaker or understood the lyrics of a song without needing to look up the words. These moments felt like small victories, affirming my progress and motivating me to keep going. I remember the first time I had a dream in English. It was a surreal experience, as if my subconscious mind had finally embraced the language. It made me feel like English was becoming a part of who I was. Not just something I was learning, but there were also moments of deep frustration. Times when I couldn't find the right words, when I misunderstood someone's meaning, or when I felt overwhelmed by the complexity of the language. I remember once trying to participate in a discussion about a complex topic and feeling completely lost. I couldn't follow the thread of the conversation, and I felt embarrassed and inadequate. Experiences like this made me question my abilities and whether I would ever truly master the language. In these low moments, I often felt isolated and discouraged. It's easy to compare yourself to others and feel like you're falling short, especially when you're surrounded by people who seem so fluent and confident. But I learned to be kinder to myself, to acknowledge the progress I had made rather than focusing on my shortcomings. I reminded myself that learning a language is a lifelong process, and setbacks are a natural part of that journey. What helped me through these difficult times was finding a supportive community of fellow learners and mentors. We shared our struggles and triumphs, encouraged each other, and celebrated our progress together. This sense of community made a huge difference. It reminded me that I wasn't alone in my struggles and that every learner, no matter how proficient they seemed, faced challenges at some point. As my proficiency in English grew, I began to see the language not just as a means of communication but as a tool for personal and social change. English opened doors for me, giving me access to education, information, and opportunities that would have been out of reach otherwise. It also allowed me to connect with people from diverse backgrounds and to participate in discussions about global issues that I cared about. One of the most impactful experiences I had was volunteering as an English tutor for refugees and immigrants in my community. Many of the people I worked with were starting their English learning journey from scratch. They faced immense challenges, not just in learning the language but also in adapting to a new culture and environment. Working with them reminded me of my own struggles and how far I had come. It was incredibly rewarding to help them navigate their new lives and to see their confidence grow as they improved their language skills. This experience also made me reflect on the privilege of language. English is often seen as the global language of opportunity, but not everyone has equal access to learning it. Teaching English to those who needed it for survival and integration highlighted for me the importance of language education as a tool for empowerment. It inspired me to continue supporting language learning initiatives and to advocate for more inclusive and accessible education policies. Looking back on my journey, I realized that learning English has been one of the most transformative experiences of my life. It has shaped who I am, opened up new worlds of knowledge and opportunity, and connected me with people and cultures I would never have encountered otherwise. It has been a journey of intellectual growth, personal discovery, and emotional resilience. I now see English not just as a language I have learned, but as a part of who I am. It's a tool I use to express myself, to think critically, and to engage with the world. It's a bridge that connects me to others and to the broader global community. And it's a passion that I continue to nurture, whether by reading a new novel, exploring a different accent, or helping others on their own language learning journeys. As I look to the future, I know that my relationship with English will continue to evolve. There are still many challenges to tackle, many new areas to explore, and many more experiences to be had. But I'm excited about what lies ahead. Because if there's one thing my journey has taught me, it's that learning a language is not just about reaching a destination, it's about enjoying the journey itself. And I can't wait to see where this journey takes me next. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video. Have a nice day.